Technical ability, we're going to start with this. On-camera presence. Now, this isn't as simple as charisma. It's different. There are some people who have fantastic on-camera presence who aren't necessarily super charismatic. Many people lack this, though. It's one of the reasons why when people get mad when they bring in some like outside interviewer or desk or stage host, oftentimes it might be a woman who hosts like trade shows, often television or something, or someone like OJ who's worked with like massive events and stuff. They come in with a lot of this stuff. Doesn't matter, they don't know about the game. They're not even fucking talking about the game half the time. It's an area where you could even say Frankie actually has a strength, even though she's been horrible to me, but whatever, fuck it. I give people their credit, I'm not like her. So,
and they upset them. So this final took place, and I watched it, and the actual series wasn't such a great series. It was just EDG stomping and being incredibly dominant. And crucially, in the series, Nami was an absolute monster. He just was essentially almost perfect and just completely dominated the opponents. So this was the first breakout if you were a Westerner for Nami and you hadn't watched much Chinese LoL. But what's interesting is I watched the game, thinking I'm coming in to watch EDG and I'm coming to see how good Nami is and all the rest of it, so I can start to get interested and look into it. But the actual thing I took away from the game that was most significant was, who is this female commentator who's doing these games? Bearing in mind I knew that it was kind of like a low-tech community grassroots effort doing the commentary for it, and that they had a rotating cast of people, and I didn't know any of the people and any of the names. I thought to myself, I'm not going to have much expectations here. I've seen what it's like when just fans do things, and people who maybe have some knowledge, but they probably won't have many good delivery skills, or they don't know how to structure what they're doing. And what I found was the person doing this color commentary, everything about it was impressive. The knowledge base was really solid and really deep, and went even into areas of like past things that they could recall that I'd researched myself for articles. Delivery was absolutely spot on, totally on point. It was very smooth. It flowed. There wasn't any awkward pauses. It went from one thing to another. It weaved from this into the next thing, into cutting into some action that was happening here, and then back into a point that made sense. And there was a coherency and a kind of consistent layering of the information. So it could go to deep levels and go deeper than that. If you didn't know what player she was talking about or the history of it, you could just stay on another level below, but understand that there was something she was alluding to. It was working really well. Now, in terms of technical skills, here's what's really interesting. This is the one where the older guys always try to pick up on new ones, and they always try to sort of shit on some of the new casters, like, well, you got to pay your dues and learn your technical skills, and don't interrupt someone when they're talking, and know when to use the dead end, how to keep the flow going. Yeah, well, that's another area where I actually suspect anyone who's an old caster who's saying that Frostgrove doesn't have those technical abilities hasn't listened to her. And I'd love them to come back at me and let's have a debate. And you know what, let's have a video debate, and I'll actually bring up some examples, and let's see if your eyes fucking glaze over as the audience realizes you have no clue what the fuck you're talking about. Because her technical skills are better than the majority of color casters out there. Now, some of the ones I've referenced already are elite level guys. They are really good at this. No matter who you put them with, they're going to be on point, and they're going to fill the gap that they're supposed to fill, and they're not going to talk too much, and they're not just going to cut someone off, and they're going to give the relevant information. She's close to that level. She's not quite as polished as some of the ones I'm talking about, Monty and Jat, etc. They've got years of experience. They've got the same sort of ability, talent level, but she's got years and years of experience to catch up on them, or to get to a similar level. In that sense, she wouldn't have to catch up to them, because once you get to a certain threshold, it's going to be fairly negligible how much you can improve beyond that, because they're very, very good at that point. They're almost as good as you can get. So in that sense, give her a year or so and she would be at that level. Now, the people below her, she's better than a lot of them. Like, I've never seen someone who's a rookie color commentator who was this polished just off the bat. That's ability right there. And that's a mixture of ability and then honing it and putting in so much effort that you get really good really fast. And it looks like just natural skill. There's actually a saying that, like, perfect technique, I might even be making this up, but I'm sure I'm paraphrasing it somewhere, like, perfect technique is mistaken for like natural skill when it's that good, because it's so good and so polished. You think, oh, they must just naturally be good at that area.
For the women we have in esports. So Emily Rand, this is a journalist who works for ESPN. She works in Overwatch. She works in League of Legends. This is someone who, if I had a vote, and I do, for Journalist of the Year 2018, I would give my vote to her. She is one of the hardest working journalists we've ever had. She has immersed herself deeply in both these games, particularly League of Legends, a game that logistically feels almost impossible to be a true expert in, because there's so many regions, the entire globe plays it, that to actually have a really strong grounding in all the regions is unreal. And she has the closest I've ever seen. Her and Kelsey have gotten the closest to like a full grounding in all the major regions I've ever seen. It's unbelievable. She can do written pieces that are very good. She started to do interviews. She's improving in that area. She's doing talk shows now. She's even developed like a sense of humor. She's got a little bit of playfulness to it. It's more enjoyable to watch. This is someone who's doing it all at the moment, doing it all at a very high level, is number one in her field, and it's not number one for a woman or because, well, we have to let like 20% of women in the field to show we're not sexist and be inclusive. No, she just came into a field that had nothing to do with sex or gender, killed it, did an amazing job, improved, constantly, incredibly productive as well, put out work over and over again, doing research all the time. Someone who, quite frankly, who sacrificed a lot of their life to be this good, just like a male CEO might in a company. And someone comes along and goes, is he just there because he's a man? Like, that's a sexist perspective itself. Then you've got someone like Shocks. Shocks is one of the very best hosts we have in all of esports, and it has fuck all to do with her being a woman, because plenty of men do the hosting gig as well. Red Eye, Machine, some of these guys are fantastic at the job. Pocket, some of my favourites. She's as good as any of them. That's not an exaggeration. She is a veteran. She's done it for many, many years now at a very high level. She's someone who's very intelligent outside of the game in her own way. She has multiple degrees in different subjects, a kind of educational background and foundation that most people in gaming do not have. Most of those who are even successful are self-made, and we had to come up usually through hard times in life and start from the very bottom of society and work our ways up. This is someone who actually has like the pedigree, could probably go and do many other things in the world, could have a very successful career elsewhere. She's chosen to work in the field of esports. She's been one of the best, not just recently, for years and years, going back including to the period when they would claim, they needed to have this diversity stuff to raise women up, etc. She's fluent in numerous languages. She has a fantastic ability to engage with players emotionally and draw things out of them that they might not from another host. One of the very best we've got. Get your 5 players and, I don't know, maybe a sub in case of injury or something. Put them all in one location and get them apartments to live in and have an office to play from. And the idea is, I mean, if it wasn't for the fact at the moment I despise the ethical behaviour of a company like Refresh, I'd even say they'd be a great company to get in on this. They already have a practice facility that they often boast around that Astralis and Heroic and all the others were able to go to and play from. You get them a place to play from where you'll have all the cameras, etc., but they'll have their own life in the apartments that you'll only slightly feature in the reality show. Get them a top coach, so at the moment that's going to be a top male coach, whether that's like Threat, legendary Nip coach, or one of the current coaches who maybe in the off-season could do this, Zeus or Sonic, whoever it might be. Get them a whole staff, get them a sports psychologist who's proven and got a track record, get them a chef who can design them like a good healthy diet, get them a dietitian to tell them how to eat, get them a physical trainer to make sure they're in top shape and that they can withstand all the stresses and the strains of their life, and train these guys before they ever go to any big tournament for like 2 straight months. Maybe along the way as testing points, you go to small lands, you go to a tier 3 or tier 4 and you play some online qualifiers just to get some experience under your belts. You're probably not going to win the qualifier at this point in time. At that point in time, use the fame of the project, use the fame of the people backing it, the name of the project, the fact that it's a thing, to maybe get some invites to closed qualifiers. You can do this to some of the smaller lands where the team that you would be replacing would be some no-name tier 4 team that no one cares about. So they might give you an invite, much as they gave the original Kingwin lineup when it was actually a joke team, invites to certain tournaments at times, because obviously people were going to watch. People wanted to watch even if they were going to fail. You could actually abuse that angle to get into some of these tournaments. I'd even consider, if you look back at like 2016, when some of the top semi-pro EU teams would go to China and Asia and play in those tournaments for money, Epsilon, Heroic back in the day, I'd even consider going to some of those tournaments to get some experience under your belt, play the proper teams, get your name out there. After 2 months, you have a 6-month span, and they have to all be in for this. They can't quit. For 6 months, you make a real push to become a top team in the world of Counter-Strike. You go for it all. And you do not accept failure. You're going for it all. That's why they have to be high enough. You might give this a go. And if it in any way worked, even if they failed, but the people on the show showed themselves to be dedicated, showed they went for it, showed they did the practice, they did the preparation, they listened to the coach, they tried to grind FPL, they worked through the qualifiers. Even if they do all that and fail, I actually think if people were to watch these girls go and compete in a system like this, immediately it would start to change the paradigm of how some of the naysayers I talked about at the top always just dismiss the whole topic and use the same points over and over again, even when some of those points aren't as valid anymore, even though some of them have some greater truth. Some of them even have
half right at some point in time, even though some of them can be a little bit ignorant of what's possible in the future. So I think actually if people just saw the struggle that these people went through and they saw them really try and they saw that they meant something to them and that they really wanted to be top players and that they had some kind of talent, I think immediately there would be an initial level of respect from some viewers that would be accorded to these players that maybe they wouldn't have had before. They wouldn't have cared in that same way before. They wouldn't want to follow the story. So it's just one of those ideas I'm throwing out there. But in a world in which people are willing to try these things and where media's looking for new stories, new excitement, new heroes, I think this would be a great concept to try. As I said before, I would use terms of affection myself. Like actually, it's quite famous. You can maybe ask some of the women in the industry who are friends of mine that if I feel very close to them, I will refer to them as love or honey or sweetie or whatever. I mean, I would never really use honey or sweetie generally. It's mainly going to be love or something along those lines, or babe or something, because actually that is just something where in my particular background, that is a term of endearment. It is understood culturally that way. And these women, due to knowing me, hopefully would understand it that way also. Now, yes, I do think that if people are being overly familiar and they don't know you, and there seems to be a sexist aspect, now it's not the worst sexism in the world, but okay, let's acknowledge it exists, right? And that's a very tricky aspect to tease apart, as you saw when I gave my own experiences there.
Now, here's what's funny about women having their own tournaments. Like many people, naively, in the early days, when I didn't know much about the industry, I also used to think, this is fucked up. Why isn't that money from the women's tournament just going into the overall real tournaments, which aren't male tournaments? Everyone competes for it, and the best players get to win the money. Because again, esports is about competition. It's not about diversity and inclusiveness. No, it's not about including everyone. It's about just finding the best players and having them compete. That's society that's about including everyone. Esports is very much not about including everyone. We don't include shit players, for example. Men who are white males who can't compete in the game. We don't go, we've got to include you in the pro scene and have some of your own teams. No, because they're not good enough. Therefore, they're naturally filtered out because this is about competition. They're about putting on the show with the best players. So, as a result, I used to naively think, like many people, they should take that money away. What a waste of money. But what I've learned about the esports industry, and this is why I never get bothered by female-only tournaments, is that budget is used specifically because they are women, to market them. And that budget comes to hold their tournament to be its own spectacle. And if that budget was not used for the women's tournament, it would not be added to the male tournament. In fact, it would not be used for esports. The budget would be used elsewhere in a different area, perhaps not even in gaming by that company. So as a result, it does not impinge upon or impact male budgets. And like I say, you can't just relocate the money from one to the other. So now that you know that, don't complain about female-owned tournaments on the basis that they exist. They should be allowed to exist. It's fine, and it is better for esports in terms of some more people. They happen to only be women and discriminate against men, but some more people are getting to play tournaments on stages, in front of live audiences, and win money. I think in some senses, that is good. I don't see many negatives to it overall. Now, there are negatives in terms of maybe the impact it has upon women and the fact that some of them aren't being forced to compete in the male scene as much. So what happens is we've got this creepy desire for some women and some men as well to want to change other women's behavior from what the free will of those women is determined to want to do, and how much they want to do a certain hobby, and how much they then want to invest in a certain hobby, how much they enjoy a certain hobby, and whether they're willing to go pro and trying to be pro in a certain hobby. That's what people are trying to do. Some creepy desire to change other people's behavior. That's sinister, that's fascist, that's tyrannical to me. Now, imagine that you were talking about an animal, right? So imagine there was an animal, and they exist, a type of bird where the female bird sits on the eggs, and as a result, like keeps them warm and waits for them to hatch, and the male bird doesn't. Now imagine a bunch of humans came in and said, you know what, this is fucked up, we've got to be inclusive, all birds should be taking a turn with the eggs. That's just sexist. So what we're going to do is, we're going to have some sort of fucked up behavioral treatment where we actually electrocute the female bird when it comes too close to the eggs, 1 out of 3 times, so it's going to do it less. And then we're going to do something like give a special treat to the bird, that's the male bird if it comes near, and then we're going to keep putting it on the eggs and then give it a treat, and we're going to do all this. We're going to try and mentally change the way these birds behave and what they want to do so that they sit on the eggs. You would think to yourself, is this person mentally ill? This is what they are spending their time doing, and they actually essentially are just in denial of what the natural course of things are and want to change it in some way which doesn't seem to have any benefit except their own fucked up, creepy, sinister desire to want things to be the same, which explicitly are not the same, and for good reason.
Now, you know you never catch me dolo online because I'm rolling deep and we dem boys. Who am I talking about? The Skrilluminati. So this video and the content on my channel is kindly supported by Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Thorin, Jensen Goh, Nicky, Jasun. You know who my second in command is, Jerky's minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for some of my content? Would you like to ask me a question in an AMA? Do you want to take part in one of those lengthy discussions where you get to set the topic? Maybe you want to see who upcoming guests are in my interviews and on my talk shows. Well, all of these perks and more are available to you if you put your money where your mouth is and join the Skrilluminati today. How? Via the Patreon link in the description box below. You dig?